Shalom, everybody, and welcome back to the Neutral Zone. I'm your host, Renaissance Woman, aka Ren Judah, and I'm kicking off a series of interviews with people who help make the Neutral Zone what it is or what it was at one time today. So, just kind of doing a walk down memory lane and going to do a series with people who help build the channel. And today I'm here with Taz Exclusives. And so, Taz, for people who don't know you, who stumble across this video, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
I am Taz Exclusives, the GOAT, the B1 King of Content. Just I've actually moved into more of a true crime lane and whatnot. So over the years of just being a content creator, it depends on kind of what you were watching if you would have saw me, you know what I'm saying? So um just I call myself just a YouTuber now, not even really a specific topic, you know what I'm saying? I'm liable to do anything as opposed to the one or two topics I used to center around. I kind of do whatever now.
So let's talk about that history a little bit about what you used to do on YouTube and how it's evolved. So, basically, I would like to know, like, just about the progression of from where you were to where you are now. Because, of course, for people who know us, we used to do a show here on this channel called The Daily Roast. And then on your channel, just talk about the type of content you used to do and where you are now.
So I would say the content I used to do was more so challenging what I would consider the status quo in regard to the Black community. So just little things that some people might challenge. I was trying to bring a lot of those to conversation. And what I found was that a lot of people don't really want to converse about any of that. People kind of have a position that they hold and they're just looking for people to follow them or, you know what I'm saying, to get along or whatever. But to kind of challenge some of these things and make some changes in the community to have real discussions behind that. I just thought that doing that, I thought it would be beneficial. But once I got into it and did it for long enough, I realized why nobody else does it. And so I kind of got away from it because I feel like not only is it not beneficial to me, but it's not even beneficial to the people around because people start getting attacked for supporting you if you support the wrong thing. So at some point it became detrimental to try to be a benefit. It almost becomes easier to do content for people that aren't Black. You know what I'm saying? To put it in a nicer way. Because the original content I did was just centered around the Black community. But I feel like I can offer more than that. But I wasn't here to do that at first, and so now I've just kind of expanded and decided that I got to use everything I know, use all of my skill set, not just the things I know that would apply to the community.
So let's talk about some of the controversy and the elephant in the room, like what happened to your original YouTube channels. And when you initially came onto YouTube, your challenging of the status quo and how that took shape and has shaped your YouTube career now.
Yeah. So it kind of just disappeared, just one day it was gone. And people was taking credit for it. I try not to point fingers because you never know what happened. People
Right.
will always say I did it and blah blah blah. But for the most part, it what's insulting behind it, what I will say is some of the things that I did challenge in regard to like how men treat women. For the first few years, it seems like the content was appreciated, that it was necessary. At some point, just to say it for what it is, those women started getting accepted by those men, and you found that they were having relations, and so it became a thing where the men I'm calling out are actually now dating the women that claim that they don't want to date the men. And so, I'm giving a platform to people that don't really mean what they're saying. In fact, I become the person to stand behind while you throw rocks at the other side. And so, again, being that I came in initially challenging men, I had a lot of men that just didn't like that challenge. Subsequently, women who weren't serious about any of these topics, they kind of use me to get their insults off. You know what I'm saying? To kind of, I feel like they kind of sifted through the men to find the one they wanted. You know what I'm saying? I hate all black men, but then they find one they want, and now they're no longer even supporting my platform. They didn't ran off with somebody they met on my platform. So, I lost 2 subscribers right there. You know what I mean? So it just became a question of why would I even be in the middle of that if I'm happy in my relationship? I'm not having any issues, but I'm trying to lend my voice and lend my platform to those who may not be happy. And in hindsight, like I say, I should have pushed more of what I had, which is a loving, happy relationship that don't have them issues that I supported people on.
Yeah, I think when we entered the space, there was a bit of naivety on our part because we didn't understand the full dynamic of what went on in the space before we arrived. And so I have watched that play out, not just here, but I even watched it play out on Clubhouse where there was all this, gender war stuff. And really, and what we had always said, it just boiled down to people frustrated about their relationship statuses. And once they became involved, all of a sudden everything disappeared and you were left, or I or whoever else was left being the bad guy. So like
Hmm.
your introduction into the space, it kind of was like you got to be the bad guy. You got to be the Pookie, if you will, for lack of a better word. Because I do remember you coming on with that I am Pookie because I did feel at the time that the I am Pookie moniker was important because the way the manosphere had separated themselves, it was as if they were white collar workers, blue collar workers who were the good guys, and that guys who didn't talk like them or look like them, they were just thugs. And you were like, no, like we are workers. We are the blue collar workers too. We are the white collar workers as well. That whole Pookie moniker is somewhat of a myth because there is this thing where guys who wanted to create a victim space were like, well, women only want thugs. And we just knew it was not true. And I could say, having been in law enforcement, firefighters, policemen, security, electricians, you name it, plumbers, all these blue collar workers, all of them were not just straight laced guys. They were guys who kind of looked like Pookie at times, or what you would assume was Pookie because they weren't, as they like to say now, suited and booted. I thought it was good to come in and just kind of rip the band-aid off of that and just say, hey, you're classifying and labeling a whole group of black men, doing basically stereotyping them.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And to be honest, I really thought that there was an intellectual challenge being thrown out there to those same men because it was supposed to be they're smart, they're this, they're that. And okay, so I'll take on the bad guy that you're claiming, doesn't do anything positive in the community. He don't raise his kids. He's not smart. He don't read. I said, okay, I'll take all of that imagery and challenge you all. And I do think that was a mistake. Because even still, I still stand on that. But if you
Yeah,
challenge a bunch of people who really ain't looking for a challenge, what I'm saying? It becomes, like I said, it becomes difficult because they were here for those women's attention. And the more gaslighting they did, the more attention they got. And, technically they were able to get what they wanted out of it. And it seemed like I was just there as a hater. You know what I mean? The
right,
challenge of I'm the Pookie wasn't to say I'm still in the streets or any of that. It was for
right.
intellectual purposes, but they ran from it.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of pseudo intellectualism in the space. People pretending and trying to present themselves as if they were the ones that were here to bring reason and voice to the black community, and that's not actually what happened. Actually, it was that Tommy Sotomayor used to do a segment called Hollywood Clowning Black Women, and to me, the black space at the time really was just black people clowning black people. There was no real openness to having dialogue about the issues in the community. And I thought your content was unique in that you actually tried to show the perspective of that the vilification of black people in the press is just that. And then you would, juxtapose it to similar crimes from our white counterparts to just show that not only does the prosecution look different, the imagery and the discussion looks different around these issues that are really wholly American issues. These aren't specifically race-based issues, but when once you're online, there's just this need, particularly in our community, to vilify Black people.
While at the same time complaining about said community being vilified. And I think that's where I ran into issues that is the doublespeak, the desire to do this the correct way and mean what I'm saying every time and stand on that every time. What I've come to realize is you can say what you want to say whenever you say it. And you don't have to carry the same position onto the next video or the video after. So if in one video you're calling out, let's say, something that happened within the Black community, you can't necessarily do that in the next video because everyone's not going to be appreciative of it. Some are perfectly fine with, let's say, calling out the thugs in the streets and blah, blah, blah. But then if you call out a woman who does the same crime in the streets, well, now they don't like it because you called out a woman. They were only
Right,
really there to hear you call out men. So it
right,
becomes difficult when everybody don't have the same bottom line agenda, which is a better community.
right. So let's talk about that evolution, right? So once you realize what the dichotomy really was, do you feel like now that you've had to shift, and in that shift, because it was the B1 network, Black First, what does that look like now for you?
Um, a failed opportunity, a failed attempt. And I mean, I say that with all love for what I was taught by my mom and my grandmother, my grandparents, what I'm saying, my dad, everybody that was contributed to my understanding of what it meant to grow up and be Black in a household of historians, right? But having said that, this ain't the time that we live in anymore. And so Black First Media today looks like Lil Durk. It looks like Diddy. It looks like, you know what I'm saying? It looks like everything gossipy. It looks like Meg Thee Stallion and Kamala
Yeah.
Harris. But, my understanding of Black First Media was to show you the new mayors that just got elected, right? The new judges that just got elected. Like, my understanding of what that media was supposed to look like would have been successful. It wasn't, we lost this, we failed at this, we lost that. This person, it was about finding the positives every day in that media. And if anything, I'm gonna, come on and give some smoke about is how we treat each other. But when we're doing media, yeah, we can find different understandings that we don't hear enough of. And like I say, with the election that just passed, you haven't heard anything of the 15, 20 new people who have taken jobs that a Black person never held before. Those are Black firsts. And because I know people don't care about it, I had to leave that behind.
So you feel like today there is no room for a Black First Media channels. So like, well, what do you think when I say like in regards to like Sinetta TV, and you still see people who the African Diaspora channel who are claiming to have a Black perspective? Do you think it is sincere?
I think it's exploitive. It might be sincere at times and in moments, but at some point, what you're doing is exploitive, right? You can't necessarily do the black, black, black thing without being honest and saying, okay, we causing some of our own issues, y'all, and then point to some of the issues that are being caused. I have 20-year-old children, right? So they're going to run into some mistakes. Why would I present the world as something perfect to them as if they're not gonna hit those pitfalls? And I think that's what a lot of these channels that call themselves pro-Black or any of that, they don't
Hmm.
prepare younger Black people for the ups and downs of the world. Everything is the white man's fault. Everything somebody did to you, and they're not prepared for mistakes. They're not prepared for bouncing back when a mistake or a loss happens. I just feel like a lot of those channels teach victimhood instead of intellect.
So what does so what is you want to post a link in the chat too for your channel now, and tell us the name of your channel now, and what does content on there look like now that you reached the conclusion that you have as far as Black First Media goes.
So now I do it's called exclusive news and reviews, and it's like I say, I just don't give as much of my personal opinion about the direction the world is headed in. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing more so just reporting the story, and that's that. And that's kind of difficult for me because I did do content for 6 years strictly based on my opinion of a story, right? It wasn't just, here's what happened, guys. It was, my opinion is the story. And so it's kind of difficult now because now it's less of my opinion and more of just the story, and getting into content that way is, once you've done it, leading with your opinion all this time, it's different to do it now where you're not leading with your opinion, you're just telling a story. And, it is a little bit different, but I'm getting used to it.
But do you think that that's where media is today, though? Like when you watch Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, that most of those are pundits, and people they watch it not necessarily for the news, they watch it for that person's opinion. Like shows like First Take, even with sports, like they want to hear people's opinions on the topic.
I would say a specific person, though, a celebrity, right? Because I mean, I would argue that there was a time when people wanted to hear my opinion on those topics about black people, about what's going on with black women, and say how black men operate. There was a time when people wanted to hear my opinion on that. But it's unfortunate that when my opinion doesn't align with your opinion, you don't want to hear my opinion no more. So what I found is that people want to be fed. They want you to give them what they want. And if you're not big enough, it's not about your opinion. You're small time. I'll pay you to say what I want you to say. And then I'll come back if you ever grow big, and I'll support you on your opinion if you ever get big enough. That's what it is out here.
It's kind of disappointing. So, because like, so do you, or were you saying there's no room on your channel to address controversy now, or are you just gonna do strictly news, like just reporting live from the channel?
Keep in mind, this is me, fam. I'd mess around and do whatever any day. You know what I'm saying? To make my point. If I got to say it, I'm going to say it that day. But I'm saying the days of the concerted effort of pushing for change, of pushing for intellect, of what is wrong with y'all? Why are y'all doing this? Those days are over. You know what I mean? I can't throw all of my thoughts and my heart into things that I know ain't successful and people don't care nothing about too much.
Do you feel like that means that you pull back from collaborating with other YouTubers and the audience at large? You know how we used to have panels and you let people come up and hold discussions. Based on your experience, has that made you pull back from that?
From newer people, yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you. All of the men that I thought supported me over the years, I feel like most of them were just there to access some women. If we're just being honest, because like I say, I never truly disappeared off of social media, so it wasn't a big deal. But those men didn't come to Rumble to support me. You know what I'm saying? A few of the women did. I ain't gonna say a few, a bunch of them. And a bunch of the women, they never left my Patreon. They never stopped supporting my content. But the men that were allegedly there and had my back and whatnot, man, look, I don't even want to get too much into it because I don't want to have to drag nothing. But some of them cats is with the people who were once on the opposite side. You know what I'm saying? So they weren't ever standing on what it was I was calling out. They was just there because that's where the clout was at one point. You know what I mean? But it wasn't about standing on no issues. And I've always been about the issues. It was never about the clout, the views, the making money. And I think if I would have went in that direction, I probably would have had a bigger, safer channel. But I went after people. I went after issues, and with that, I made a lot of enemies.
So would you think it's fair to say that if you stand on something, if you stand for something in this space, because I've just watched so many channels change and evolve and how people are just able to pick up ideas and beliefs and drop them at a moment's notice. And there's never like for me, I I'm still a Torah keeper. Despite all I've been through, I feel like I've learned a lot in the space, but I still hold fast to my faith and my beliefs. Do you feel like the people who you've done content with, do you feel like nobody like what do you feel about consistency? Do you feel like there's anybody here that's authentic and holding true to what they believe in? And what does that mean for us in media if that's the case?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. Um, so pretty much I have to say no. Because I think, for example, with a lot of those men I was dealing with, they were giving their authentic feelings about some of the things they had issues with, but they're gonna put some cap on it too. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna add something to it that negates it from being a 100% argument. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get the attention, trying to grow your audience, trying to gaslight the women. It's always got to be something extra or over the top to bring in the audience. If we just saying, okay, ladies, here's the truth. Black men don't support you. Nobody loves you. You're doomed. It's people that'll just come in and support that just based on that statement. But if you try to lay that out as an entire argument with the facts, the data, for example, the black femicide conversation, I found myself at odds with a lot of men because I'm like, bro, why are y'all mad because I'm giving these facts? Well, I'm just giving you the data. But what
Right,
happened is women took that same data and said, well, we might as well just start dating white men because, they hate us. And you know what I'm saying? That wasn't the goal of the
right.
content, right? So what ends up happening as the person that did it, I'm like, okay, well, fine. I support you. If you feel like that's what's better for you, go date them then. But then what ends up happening on the other side is me and, oh, okay, well, you telling black women to go date white men. So no matter what, content that came straight from the heart to be beneficial, to talk about black women being safe, somehow turned into dating white men and, you know what I'm saying?
More
Everything
hate.
but where it started.
Yeah, it just kept multiplying into. It's kind of like Gremlins. Once Gizmo got wet, they just and so it's like all
Yeah,
these little
it's
running
all over the
around.
place now. My
Yeah,
original point was, hey, I support you, sis. Like whatever you're doing is what you're doing. And so if you got a white husband, I don't even really support that. But I'm happy for you. And I can leave it there. I don't have to try to chastise you for who you chose. Right. And keep in mind, Ren, that was an evolution. I came into doing content on YouTube as a person that's 100% against interracial dating. You look back at my Facebook days, like, fam, you a cool and get up out of here. That type of mentality. It wasn't until I realized people playing with that. People aren't even serious about those stances. And I had to look at myself and do a self-examination. Why do you care so much about who people dating, dude?
yeah.
It took a self-examination, and with that, some felt like it was like, oh, you just, pandering to women. It's like, no, fam, I don't want to be in the middle of people's relationship, and I was wrong for doing it to the men as well, and I acknowledged it, but there's nothing you could do to go back, and I'm certainly not begging for acceptance. No, I said what I said when I said it, and that's one thing that I'll say. I don't really stand on that anymore. You can date who you want to date, and I shouldn't have been in the middle of it.
Yeah, so I think there is some evolving in the content because I feel like some of the angry rhetoric and some of even the things that I participated in, I just don't have the energy for it like I used to because I just feel like kind of like you do, like it didn't gain us anything. There was no we saw no real gains from that content. I feel like it was
Uh,
just the gender war, just back and forth, back and forth. And then when you see like 4 years later certain content creators still repeating the same points. It's like there is no growth, and the whole purpose of it is that it never was meant to grow. So, in knowing that, I think you have to evolve and do something different, and it sounds like that's where you have gone with it. So, what can we look forward to in terms of content? Is it just strictly news, or what else are we going to be seeing from you?
So I just it's hard for me to get away from the news. I be trying to do different stuff, but that's really like my first love is reporting what's going on now. So everybody can't say I didn't know. Well, I didn't know this was
Right.
going on. Like I try to keep people, because everyone seems to say I don't watch the news. I hate the news. The mainstream media is fake,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of my first love. But what you can look forward to, I would say, is what I'm getting more into and what I enjoy now is that the more of the unsolved mysteries, the
Okay.
things from the 80s and 90s that maybe didn't get the airplay that some of the stories get now. because some of the stories from when we were children, they were known, they were talked about, but I've never actually done a video about them. I didn't talk about the true crime of the '90s and whatnot. So it's a bunch of stories back there that you can go and do content on that have nothing to do with today, have nothing to do with any of the previous content I've done. And there's actually a sector for it. There's a lane for it where people want to watch those types of stories. So that's where
Yeah,
I'm
and I
that's where
think
I'm headed.
especially yeah, especially our generation because we were looking at those things through the eyes of a child. So to come back as an adult and look and be like, oh, because it was just kind of like for me watching The Color Purple as an adult versus it came out when I was a kid. So seeing it as an adult, you're like, wait a minute, you know what I'm saying? It's different. It's a lot different.
I still
So,
ain't seen that movie either. I still never watched it.
really, you never watched it? Yeah, when
Nah.
the remake, I couldn't go to it. Like the play, I just like that movie is so depressing. I just did not see how. Why are we singing about this? So it was just no. It was a no for me. But let me ask you, for new content creators, based on your experience in the space, what would you tell somebody new that wanted to enter social media and start doing YouTube? What would you tell
Mm. So, like, the easy answer is run the opposite direction, right? Don't even get it mixed up. You know what I'm saying? Don't even do it. That's the easy
them? Oh,
answer. But I mean, I'm real about this, you know what I'm saying? So there's a financial opportunity here and whatnot. So I think the haters tell you that. The people who don't want to see you grow, the people who don't want to see you benefit, they'll tell you how horrible it is. Okay, I would tell a person to be careful. Find you something that, I'm saying, you can get the views on, that you can grow yourself with, and kind of just be careful of who you allow around you as a support base. If you're doing the panels and whatnot, just be careful of the people you're allowing to get attention on your platform, because what I didn't know coming in, Ram, was that everybody has a platform. And when somebody gets up on your panel, they promoting their channel directly or indirectly. And as you grow, there's a lot of people that's there that are trying to grow themselves. Everybody ain't there to support you. Some people
right.
see the long game in your channel. You know what I'm saying? And so it's
Yeah.
a hard conversation to have with the person that's coming in believing, what I'm saying, that they can get the love and the respect and all of that from these audiences. It really don't work like that. A lot of it is, if they like you, they'll expect you to pander to them. You know what I'm saying? And that's, it's a rough conversation at times, but I just don't want nothing to do with that part of it anymore.
So what would you say about collaborations? Would you say don't do it, or would you say just one and done? Like, how would you tell them to go about collaborations?
I would say early on it works because you're not known. You know what I'm saying? It kind of helps you get off the ground and whatnot. But there's a point where you probably gotta cut it off. There's probably a point where you gotta start protecting, you know what I'm saying, your notoriety and your name, because people will use that collaboration to turn around and flip on you and make it seem like, you're not who you are, or you didn't give them that opportunity. You know what I'm saying? That
Right.
collaboration might mean more to you than it did to them. And it's sad, Ren, but the collaboration for some might just be the opportunity to go in on you later. You know what I mean? It wasn't about growing or any of that. They end up going in on you just for the clout. And I've worked with a lot of well-known YouTubers. You know what I'm saying? But anything I've ever said, I meant it. I ain't never went in on nobody for clout or because of some personal issue I might have had with them. I felt like it's a lot of shady people, and when they did shady stuff, it needed to be called out because other content creators might try to work with you and whatnot. But it's things that happen that people on YouTube will never know about. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't their business, but it was some shady things that happen on the back end because of
Right.
content. But so I say you just got to be careful of who you allowing yourself to get next to doing content. You just got to be careful.
Regrets. Do you have any regarding your social media experience?
Oh,
Maybe like
man,
your top three.
top three regrets. All right. I would say, I don't, I would have to think about them to put them in order. So I'm gonna
Okay.
just throw them out there. So they're not in specific order, right? But I think one of my biggest regrets would be going head first at the conversation in regard to men, right? Because it was used in a way where he's doing it for women, but it was really based on those men attacking me and my support for women. The two didn't intertwine. Those men came from me. They had to get the smoke for coming from me. And it just so happens that they don't like my position in regard to supporting women. But that was the perfect storm. And so, if anything, I look back, I regret how I came at them. You know what I'm saying? I think if I'd have came a little more um, intelligent, it would have
Mm-hmm.
forced them to be the bad guys. It would have forced them to do all the name calling. And then eventually I probably could have got out the belt, you know what I'm saying, to start whooping cats. But, you know what I'm saying, I
Yeah.
came in off top, you know what I'm saying, with the shield and the sword, like who wanted. And I
Yes.
thought that was necessary because, again, one of my first appearances on a video led to a video being made about me. And so rather than come in weak, I had to come in, maybe a little too strong. But like I say, the regret is that I'll never know what would have happened if I'd have came in with less smoke. I'll never know that if I'd have just allowed some of that, because men go back and forth, men argue all day long. But when you get the best of a man, a lot of times they'll never forgive you for it. And so I got the best of a lot of these dudes, and they never forgave me for it. So you know what I'm saying? I should have build some rapport and then like they ass up. So that was the mistake in that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another regret would be jumping 100% full force behind the women's arguments. And when I say the women's arguments, I mean the ones that they were exploiting. Because some things are just what they are. When it comes to some things that are documented and we know that men are responsible for when it comes to women, yeah, fam, I'm not never going to deviate from that. I'll always stand on that. But then there were other parts of those topics I feel where I was being exploited and I'm not gonna say I didn't know it. I'm gonna say I didn't acknowledge it. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I can't say I'm dumb and I didn't see that there were some levels of exploitation, but I didn't know that not calling out that exploitation might leave me looking around one day like, wow, so nobody saw all of that. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? No, no, like you know what I'm saying, we just gonna act like, Taz is the bad guy and nobody saw that or that. You know what I'm saying? And so I think one of the biggest regrets has to be, being 100% behind women and my content centering around that point. Hey, if y'all black men don't like black women, don't come here. This is a place where black women are safe at. And subsequently, I only end up with black women there. You know what I mean? I kind of told all the men, if you can't respect these sisters, don't come here. And for that, I didn't gain any respect. There's no acknowledgement of that today. And so that's a regret because although that's a position I hold, I came on here not realizing that this is a business. You know what I mean? And if I'm gonna make money, if I'm gonna be supportive, if I'm gonna grow a platform, there's certain ways you got to do that. And some of my regrets go back to that. Hey, I wanted to benefit from this at some point, and I thought I was building an audience, and it just happened to be women. But my positions ain't gonna change because it's men or women, right? At some point, I thought the men would come along. I ain't like I'm
Right.
lying about nothing. You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
Right.
I would definitely would regret just being behind one gender while calling
Yeah.
out the other. That was, what I'm saying, I should have came with a more balanced approach with that. But like I say, in that moment, if I'm too balanced, it's kind of a benefit to these men who call themselves coming for me, calling me out, bothering the women for wrong reasons, bothering my wife. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I couldn't allow that either. You know what I'm saying? Bothering you. You know what I mean? So it came to a point where I was probably supposed to do it a specific way because them call outs were still necessary, but I
They
didn't have
were.
to do it with all the smoke I had.
Yeah.
Ooh. And
Yeah.
so
And
let me see. One more regret I would have. I would say being too involved in what my wife was doing as far as her platform.
hmm
Um, I think there was always room for me to get away from those topics or just report those topics here, but not the way. her and the people she working with report them. Reporting them from more of a balanced standpoint, because I did hear men complaining, but their complaints were about the individuals. You complaining about what Nyla said. You're complaining about what she's talking about in the subject matter, but you're not dealing with what she said in the video, right? You're not listening to her say, hey, y'all have to stop treating us like this. And so it became a point of, since so many men are looking at her platform to get triggered, calling themselves being jealous of me, looking for insight inside of what women are talking about, it probably would have been better for me to just stay away from that and defend her when necessary, right? It probably wasn't necessary for me to be part of the calling out men from women's platforms. My call outs from my platform was me, and I stand on them 100%. I mean everything I said about you on my platform. But see, when white are talking about
Oh, I just lost Taz.
Um, where were we? I'm sorry.
So you were just talking about how you wish you had to just kind of distance yourself a little bit from, and I guess you're saying let Nyla handle some of
from
her
right
own
from the women's content.
smoke. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that women understand their plight better than a man does, and so no matter what I did in that moment, I don't think I could have transferred my understanding that I'm getting from my wife and other women to men who ain't looking for, they're not looking for that. You know what I'm saying? And I would even go a step further and say they're not even interested in that, you know? So the closer I get to the women's content that calls those men out, the further I get away from my legitimate call out on them man to man. So now it's convoluted because some of my call outs for them are man to man based, but then others are based on something they did to the women. You know what I mean? And so if I'm not as close to my wife's content, I don't think that all of that gets confused. It is just man to man if I'm not appearing on my wife's channel or, you know what I'm saying, hanging out with the women today. It's just man to man every time if I'm only in the male space. And like I said,
Right.
it's not a regret of doing content with my wife or any of the
Yeah.
women, but it's knowing now that that came off as, oh, he only speaking for the women, and that
Right.
wasn't the point. The point was, no, we can work with women and deal with men too, because when we got to the space, there was more of this element of the women are horrible. You got to stay away from them. If you work with them, you're doomed. You know what I'm saying? It was like,
Yeah.
no, dude, that's crazy.
But only to come back later and find out though that's all they really wanted. They
That's
just
all
couldn't
they
get
wanted.
close to them. They wanted to do content with the women. The women just would not go, and they kind of used us as a bridge to get to that.
And then a lot of people walked across that bridge.
They did. So,
Yeah.
what do you say to people who say you single-handedly destroyed the Negro manosphere, or do you believe that they destroyed themselves?
I believe that they helped me destroy them. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I don't
Hmm.
think they destroyed themselves, but I do think you had 50, 60 people running around making it easy to show how degenerate, ignorant, and foolish a lot of that was. And so one could argue they destroyed themselves because they made the content available to call them out and to make it, show how foolish it was. But then somebody would have had to do that too. Even
Yeah.
to this day, a lot of people don't like to call these men out on some of the silly stuff they say. So somebody had to be the person to present their content as problematic. And I'm
Right.
saying before Kevin Samuels, because I think when Kevin came along, Red, everybody
Hmm.
saw the problem, right? But
Right.
before Kevin, there was a lot bigger issues because 70 men were saying what Kevin ended up saying that everybody had a problem with. When you got 70, 80 men saying it, that was the space I came into. The
Yep.
later space became it's just Kevin, and Kevin gets credit for everything that's said. But when we got here, it was 50 different people saying that on their
Right.
platforms.
Yeah. And Obsidian was the Godfather. Then all of a sudden, Kevin was.
Out the blue, randomly. I'll never consider him that just because, what I'm saying? Again, that was Obsidian's nickname. That was never
Yeah.
Kevin's moniker.
No. And he came in and he took it, and then to watch them, Obsidian them, to go under it because he was able to catch on and become a bit more, for lack of a better word, mainstream. So they needed to try to ride his coattails into popularity, and it didn't really
Hmm.
work for them either, though. I think some of them gained a little bit of traction, but not so much.
Not the traction I think that they thought they was gonna get from getting
Yeah,
behind that. I think Kevin gained all the traction, and a few of them, they got a few spinoff people or whatever, but Kevin got all of the notoriety and whatnot that came from that moment. And I mean, like, it was his content, so he should. But I do think he was supposed to reach back and help some of them other content creators out that had given him a platform many years before. But that's
right.
another topic. But yeah,
Yeah, we'll
he
have to talk about that some other time. But so what would you say the state of the manosphere is now, the black manosphere? Because it's funny, in
um
watching MSNBC and stuff during the campaign, there was so much talk about the manosphere, and it was funny to me because what they were saying is the manosphere is not what we know the manosphere, the black or the white manosphere, to be. And they even started throwing around terms of incels and saying that Trump, he's appealing to the manosphere and he's incels, and it was just like they don't really know what they're talking about or who these people are.
I think so I think the manosphere knew when that shift came that you don't have to claim the words anymore. I think they realized that you don't have to say it anymore. Right now
Okay.
it's we'll use red pill, or we'll use a different terminology that doesn't identify us as manosphere. And so I think, like, for example, they're still here, they're still around, but
Yeah,
what you'll find is they're in places doing content with women, they're in places doing dating content, right?
yeah,
They're not the same organized group that wants to bring down the black woman. They're now more of a group chasing the women for the dating conversation, and the panels full of women and men, and the inboxes late night to talk to those
yeah,
same women. What I'm saying? That manosphere crew now is, they've gotten what they wanted. They wanted access to those women. They got it. And so they're not the manosphere anymore. They would be just some regular men that's chasing women. You know what I mean? That's why I don't think the manosphere exists as much, because now you'll find men that's willing to defend women that really just want to smash them, though. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So the supporting women from the position that I always had, which is, I don't want you, I don't care how you look, you don't have to even show me your face, I just support you because you sis. Those days are over, because now men take a look at you, oh yeah, I want her. I support black women. That's what you see. You know what I'm saying? And that,
yeah,
it works now. So those say, and I'm saying, Ren, people I did videos about. I just ain't calling their names because I done let a lot of that go. But it's
right.
4 or 5 manosphere dudes that I done drug up and down the internet that know better than to say my name. That I see them hanging out with women every day, laughing, smiling, and again, I could come for them and attempt to call those women out for being around them, but for what? Do
Yeah,
what
it
y'all
doesn't
do,
do
you
any
know?
good. So back to mainstream media just a little bit. So when in regards to the manosphere, when you hear or what I heard Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson being called manosphere, I never would have equated those two names with the manosphere. What do you think about that based on your experience with the manosphere, the black and the white manosphere?
Hold on,
My audio just when I was trying to fix it.
Mm, okay, so we're going to pick up where we left off before you lost sound. I was just asking you about, I wanted to go into mainstream media a little bit. And let's talk a little bit about the election as well. One thing I noticed is that something that we never considered, I never considered the manosphere. They were regarding Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson as manosphere, and I never associated them with manosphere. Is this a new thing that they're doing, or do you think that's just the media inaccurate because they haven't done the research?
Mm, that's a good question. So I actually would consider them part of the the red pill terminology, because you got to remember it's twofold. A lot of the red pill terminology started becoming part of a mainstream understanding too, where it's not
Yeah.
just the woke thing and whatnot. So I think the manosphere selling itself under that red pill ideology is what the rebranding of it was, if you will. And so it's kind of rebranded into more of the Joe Rogans, who is more of an acceptable face, as opposed to like Crowder or what's his name, Jordan Peterson, Rollo Tomasi. Those were the previous names associated with it, and so now I think they want to put, more high profile names like Trump himself. You know what I'm saying? They would put those more high profile names under quote unquote red pill, which ultimately is manosphere.
Yeah. I never considered Jordan Peterson part of the manosphere. I really didn't. But I guess but he was quoted a lot by the manosphere. But I noticed like when they would ask him things about relationships, like in the one video I saw where they were saying that the women were being too picky and he basically told them, well, rightly so, she has more to lose. They got mad about that. So I always thought he was kind of just,
But you got to
just your
remember,
average.
he was the voice of the incel though. So that in itself makes him manosphere because he chose to be
Okay.
the voice of the incel. And that's a spinoff of the manosphere that they kind of just shunned. But the
Well, was he
incel is
voice of the incel, or was he trying to reach them? Because I felt like he was trying to reach them and pull them out of their
right.
misery. Okay, I
But
see.
that's what makes him, yeah, that's what I'm saying, that the fact that he was trying to reach them and be a benefit to them made him their voice. Because I wasn't saying
Okay,
it, because I guess it's another way you could look at that too, is like the incels go out and do crazy stuff and it's his fault. And I don't really mean it like that. I mean it more like he wanted to be the person that they can listen to and find some solace in.
right. Okay. So what? Let's talk about this loss. I noticed that, like for example, Sunny Hostin on The View. One of her things was that we need to reach these crazy. What did she say? These crazy, silly, or whatever black men that are going to vote for Trump. Basically, insulted black men. And in that moment when I saw that video, my first impulse was immediate outrage, is because first of all, like you're just going to talk about black men in general when the majority of black men have always voted Democratic, right? But nobody on the panel corrected her in real time because she backed it up by talking, followed it up with, we got to reach these white women and these Hispanic men who, Hispanic men, what, voted 54% for Trump, black men just 21%, and the majority of white women voted for Trump. There was no name calling for those groups, but black people, it's just like no matter what happens, just like when the Democrats win, black women get insulted and blamed. And then with this Trump win, black men are getting insulted and blamed. It's just like whatever happens, for some reason, it's our fault.
And to be honest, like I say, one of the main reasons I said I wanted to back away from a lot of the quote unquote black centered content is because in 2020, when Joe Biden was elected, I don't know if you remember, but they said black women got him elected, and
Yeah,
there
they
was
did.
this entire, this promotion of, thanks black women and black women is black women that, and a lot of that I think was used to gaslight in later years up coming up until now. So now we get here and we're looking at the opposite side of it. It's like, black women threw their support behind Kamala at 91%. How
That's
did
right.
they not get her elected? And so I just wish
Exactly.
that we would get on to the, understanding that the mainstream media throws stuff around for us to just repeat. But I mean, it's pretty clear that we didn't really have a lot to do with Trump being elected. Sure, he got over 21% with black men, but I don't think anyone is being honest about that, Rand. I don't think Trump got over 21% just because people are coons or wanted to follow him. Trump is
I
the only
believe it.
person pushing against the rainbow. He's the candidate that said we going back toward the direction we've always been in. I'm not doing the they them pronoun stuff. And so if you leave that out, then yeah, you got to check everybody for voting for Trump. But if we factor in one of the biggest issues right now, which is where this country is headed in that conversation, Well, Trump becomes viable because he's the only one pushing back against that. And although I didn't vote for Trump, I'm not a supporter. When it comes to that issue, I'm closer to him than Kamala or any Democrat. So, you know, you can't check black men for their positions about something that we grew up, knowing what gender we were. And I just leave it there. You know what I'm saying? It's, we're in a different conversation now. And Trump is pushing for the understanding that I grew up with. I ain't really with the new understanding. And you have to acknowledge that when you're talking about now being over 20%. Yeah, he's speaking for men. It is what it
And
is.
I don't think it was just that issue. I think mainly it was the economy for the working class because I feel like the working class keeps getting stepped on and forgotten. I think Democrats, when you even look at democratically held cities, the workers, like the government workers, I know government workers right now who are on welfare, and so that they're the forgotten people, the workers, and so where they feel left behind and not acknowledged, and he acknowledged the anger. So for example, I love to watch Morning Joe, but he would go on and on about why Democrats need to keep a positive message, and he always wants to harken back to the Reagan years. It's morning in America, but it's not morning in America. Dark MAGA won because I think it's dark America. You think about what are some of our favorite TV shows right now? They feature darkness, Real Housewives, Basketball Wives. If you watch the behavior on these shows, none of it is positive. None of that is morning in America. It's cat fights. It's people dragging each other. When you look at social media, what's in the drag? It's all about who got dragged, who can get drugged, and who can do it in the most entertaining way. Morality,
Mm-hmm.
who cares? Because even with evangelicals, right? If this was really, and you think about it, I say black people, I almost feel like you should feel kind of clowned because conservatives had a tendency to try to beat you about the face and the neck with the American flag and the Constitution. And here you are with a candidate that says, F the Constitution, I'm going to get it out of here. And I truly believe that if he held a flag burning ceremony right now, no one would bat a lash, no one would complain. So it just shows me the hypocrisy of conservatives that you never meant any of that stuff. It wasn't about your faith. It wasn't about the flag or the Constitution. Like I've always known that Democrats stood for degenerate, but conservative now just stands for con for me.
And I don't think you're wrong at all, right? I don't. But I do think that when we start talking about Trump, we're not talking about conservatives. I don't think we're talking about the typical Republican Party. And so,
No, we're
in my
not.
opinion, the Trump era is over after this. And, there's a chance to get back to the original politics we used to see. But right now, I do think you're dealing with a celebrity element within politics that kind of throws off what we know as politics. Once Trump and this era of reality TV star presidents is over, I do think it'll get back to the normal everyday hustle and bustle of DC that didn't have, all of this extra reality TV star stuff in it.
Man, for me as a black person, for me, black people, that's why I've kind of mixed on our reaction to these things because even back to normal has never benefited our community. It never benefited us poor people. And so it's just funny to me to see all the weeping and gnashing of teeth as if you thought you were going to get something from Kamala because she specifically said that I'm not going to do something for just black people and then turn around in the next breath talking about what you're going to do for Israel. And it was the same with Obama for me. You can talk about not doing anything specifically for black people and black people will be totally acceptable, okay with it. But then in the next breath, talk about doing things for the LGBTQ community, talk about doing things for Native Americans, talking about doing things for Israel, talk about doing things for any other group that the Asian Americans like that law they passed for them. You know, they're and not to say that those groups don't have their issues. Talk about doing things specifically for Hispanics. That's fine. The dreamers, all that stuff for them. But black people, you get nothing. And we're okay with that. We're okay with people saying, well, we can't do anything for black people, but we can do things for these other special interest groups. What do you say to that?
I think the rhetoric is so strong on the other side, on the conservative Republican side, that it allows Democrats to do that. And unless black people, take a step away or just don't participate, you kind of locked in and forced to vote Democrat in that regard. And especially when it comes to like, because outside of, let's say, the economy, because the economy is one of those issues that a lot of that goes out the window. It has nothing to do with race. So I think
Right.
that's why that isn't the main topic too, right? I think when we saw leading up to the election, it wasn't a bunch of conversations about the economy, none of that. And I think that's the Democrats' failure too.
Yeah.
Kamala didn't really sell herself as, I'll fix the economy, I'll put some money in y'all pocket, we're gonna get everybody
No,
jobs, we're gonna fix all of this. She didn't really sell that as a talking point. And I think that's what Black America's looking for.
yeah.
And people like Donald Trump, I just think the bar is low for him. There's not a lot people expect from him. So
Right.
anything that people get from him seemingly is acceptable. And it is seeming like at this point, people are willing to take the least, the worst, all of that from Republicans while Democrats do what they want to do. I mean, it's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, because listening to them already as they try to do their so-called post-mortem on why they lost this election, and I'm listening, and I'm like, they still don't get it. They, even in talking about the so-called uneducated people who voted for Trump. Well, he ranked high in uneducated people, as if people who don't have degrees are dumb, as if
Right.
if you had an opportunity to get a degree, you wouldn't. But leaving out the fact that some people just have to go to work. Some people still have to go to work. Some people are working two jobs, so they don't have time for school. They're raising families, or they're already working two jobs and they're tired. And so, just to imply that somebody that doesn't have a degree, you're dumb. And that's why you voted for Trump. You're uneducated. I know a lot of people who don't have degrees who are smarter than a lot of the educated idiots that I do know.
Right. I didn't realize my pool man was back there cleaning the
I
pool.
think so.
But yeah,
I just
it's
think it's the insult and the attack against, and believe you me, that was seen and heard, and it was seen and heard as an attack on the working class.
mhm. And see, and it is though. I mean, anytime you're saying if you were smart, you would have voted for this person, right? That I mean, that's going to be considered an attack. And most, I think, Americans ain't really looking for the reason why the reason why he lost is because of me. Most Americans don't want to hear that. Oh, she lost because you didn't do something right. You're not
Right.
educated. It became a thing where you're now attacking the people that you wanted to vote for. You know what I'm saying? So how
Yeah.
does that help you in 28? What if, did you push some more people away from the party for the next election? I don't think they're thinking about the future of what they're saying in the midst of this loss.
Or they didn't really receive the message of the millions of people who dropped out and did not vote at all. Because, and I am one from the perspective of I voted because there are down ballot issues that I wanted to vote for. But the idea of the lesser of two evils, I don't believe in the lesser of two evils. If evil is evil, if it's evil, I'm not voting for either one of them. I
Right.
don't believe in the lesser of two people argument. It's dumb, you
Yeah,
know.
it's just to, I think it's just to make it so you don't say this is messed up on both sides. You know what I'm saying? Because
Hmm.
that's why I didn't vote. That's why I don't participate. Because as much as I love the process, I'm well studied, well versed on the process, well versed on the history of the presidents, the whole nine. But as far as going vote, the process ain't respectable today. And you don't even have to put up respectable candidates. And so with that, I feel like I would be negatively contributing by voting for someone that I don't think is qualified. If I think both of them are a failure, why would I pick a side? It don't make
I
sense.
agree. Do you feel like I hear a lot of people and notice the fear tactics being ramped up from the liberals that well, there are a lot of threats. People are getting threatened. They're going to get you now. I do think that there is a level of some groups that feel emboldened with the Trump election, but I don't think it's unlike anything in the past. And as a matter of fact, I remember when they first started. like from Timothy McVeigh on down, if you think about it, they've always been talking about the rise in white in domestic terrorism. Period. So there's
Mhm.
just been a continuation of that. And so, do I think that there is that element? And there going to be people who think they're going to be able to do whatever they want during a Trump era? We'll see. But I literally heard the same argument during the Obama administration that black people felt emboldened and they were doing more attacks on white people. Like literally remember Hannity just going on and on about black crime against white people, during that
Mhm.
time. So it's just
Mhm.
really interesting to me.
I think a lot of that too. Again, it just plays into like the mainstream. They have a necessary element there where they have to kind of push race. I ain't gonna say MSNBC as much as Fox does. I think MSNBC benefits from it, but Fox pushes it, and I think they
Yeah.
need to push that element, unfortunately, to keep their base. And so it's kind of hard because, like I said, looking forward, looking down the line in 28, if Republicans don't start reaching out to the other side and trying to get some more black voters, they're going to be sick. I mean, excuse me, if the Democrats don't change what they're doing in terms of black voters, because Republicans just won this election without black voters, right?
Right.
They picked up a whole lot of Hispanic voters and
Yeah, they
said,
did.
forget them black voters. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
both sides, I think, are going to have to come back to the drawing board, right? But in 28, though, like I said, I'm interested what's going to happen because you're not going to have the same type of politics in 28. You won't have I think maybe JD will probably still be around, but I don't think he'll be viable. I don't think any of this was about the party. This was about Trump. And so if you're next to Trump, you look good. But just like Pence, once that election is over, nobody cares about you. So I
No,
can't wait to see what happens in 28 because I don't think JD is going to, be the candidate that Trump was.
I don't either. So let's talk a little bit about this disinformation movement here. So I noticed in like Germany and other countries, over a few other countries, I believe Sweden as well, they actually teach the children about disinformation and how to decipher what they're looking at, the reality versus propaganda. They because of where they're located and situated, they have to constantly fight, against Russian propaganda. And so they're talking about bringing that type of education to America because we're now being inundated with so much misinformation online. Do you see? And I have to say that I have learned the hard way a couple of times, uh, reposting, retweeting things only to come back later and find out that it was not true at all. So now I kind of try to do my due diligence before I share something just to verify it from a more reliable source before I run with information because people really are just posting anything. And it kind of reminds me of that Annie Oakley meme we made.
Annie, are you okay? Are you okay, Annie?
Yeah, so that we
Yes.
made Taz made was that you that made the meme and just to see if people were gonna spread it, we made a meme and told some of the people in the space that Michael Jackson in the Smooth Criminal song was singing about Annie Oakley. And they literally started sharing it. It was just an experiment. And they were like, Annie, are you Oakley? It's like it's Annie Oakley.
Yeah, and see, so I don't know if you can get away from that because I think there are people who go out of their way to make sure, people are confused. And then if you factor in if everybody wants to joke, everybody wants to be part of the laughter. And so with all of that, I think the serious more important things go to the side in favor of the fun, in favor of the laughter. So I don't know if you'll ever have that element where you won't have disinformation. You know what I'm saying? I think that the disinformation actually at times sells better than the truth. You know what I'm saying? So I think the disinformation is what people want, unfortunately.
Mm. Do you feel like your platform you try to dismantle some of that disinformation? Is that what you were going to be doing, or do you think
I had a
there's any
series
benefit to
called
it?
I had a series called Deconstructing Propaganda, right? It was one of my favorite series because it kind of tackled that. And I thought that outlining some of that and showing it would get people to kind of view the mainstream different and kind of realize some of the games. But I do think coming out of that, it didn't really register for people the way it should have. I really think people want that information. Even if they determine it later to be disinformation, they still want to see it. You know what I'm saying? There's still a part of that that says, well, show it to me anyway. You know what I'm saying? And so I think there's an uphill battle to get people to turn off the TV or the internet or to ignore this or don't pay attention to that. And I think it's more of an uphill battle to say, go research that.
Yeah.
Make sure that's true before you repeat it. You know what I'm saying? That's the real uphill climb, because it wouldn't matter what people put on here if you're willing to go research it and make sure it's true. It wouldn't matter
Right.
what people told you. But like I said, the true issue is people not willing to go and do that secondary level of research that's necessary when you hear something.
Well, it was crazy to me to see JD Vance admit that he lied about some issues and said, I'm going to lie and cheat and do whatever I have to do to win. And people were perfectly okay with it. And it was like, and so I noticed that for me, that is the culture, not just online, but offline. Because online, you can debunk, and we know this from experience, debunking things right here in real time and showing people evidence that what was stated was false, and they continue to lie. Even though they know it's a lie, they will keep going with it. So I feel like there is almost no place for the truth tellers. And when you are a truth teller, you are you're not going to be popular. I don't look for this channel to be big because I just know and believe in what I believe that people don't want to hear the truth, and you're not going to be a big channel being a truth teller.
Right, not consistently. Because like I say, I think the model I've seen used is people are truth tellers when they can be. Right. So for example, with like Diddy, all of a sudden now everybody can come out and talk about trafficking and, oh my
Yeah,
God, I can't believe you're doing this to people and whatnot. But if you'd have tried that a year ago before the Cassie video came out, wouldn't nobody watch your videos? Wouldn't nobody have supported you? They would have told you trying to bring down a billionaire. You know what I mean? So a lot of it comes from what's determined to be okay by the mainstream, then passed down. Now we can all talk about it. You know what I mean? But in reality, like I say, 2 years ago, if you'd have said this about Diddy, you would have had 100 people coming to your comment section saying, stop trying to bring down that black millionaire, you know?
right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but what about the popularization of people who have been outed as liars? And just to throw, not to throw names around, but I'm gonna just say it. Jaguar Wright. I just feel like a lot of times whenever she's talking, she's lying. And I mean, like, but people and has been caught lying repeatedly, and people just be like, yeah, and
um,
it's like, does it do you benefit from telling the truth? I'm gonna tell the truth anyway, but what do you think about that whole phenomenon?
so I'm not gonna say no names. All right,
Okay,
I'm gonna do the right thing here. But
okay,
um, the situation you just described, I've seen it many a times with myself right here on YouTube, where the people that are saying he's homeless, he beats his wife, he does this, he does that. There are more people that will listen to, support, believe, and repeat that than will look at my wife and say, nah, he would never,
yeah,
listen to my wife and repeat what she's saying about me. There are more people who want the lies and the falsehoods and because they sound better, right? Because that's where you can get the roast and the fun and the jokes. That's what people gravitate to. And so what I see with Jag is what I saw with a bunch of people. And we ain't
yeah,
gonna I ain't even gonna do it. But you know what I'm saying? I can name 10 people on YouTube, men and women, who did that
me too.
same over the top, pushing the envelope. You might say something true, but then follow it up 5 things later. For example, Taz cussed me out. And he cussed me out because
Right,
he's a homeless, broke, toothless, what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
yeah, I mean that's the reality of it. And I think Jag is just she was around Jay-Z them. She has
yeah,
that going for her on a bigger level. But it's the same principles. She just has the benefit of being in the industry. So people want to hear
yeah.
them stories.
And I heard people say, well, she's just embellishing, and which okay if you want to take it. These are just stories. This is just for entertainment. But people, this are, like we saw with Tasha K being sued by Cardi B. You have to be careful what information you put out with people when people are reporting things to you. You can't get sued on these platforms. So I do think people who are, when you do grow, you I would just tell you be careful. I wouldn't tell you to just be on here talking because you think it's funny.
Well, unless you're trying to do what Jag doing, because I do believe Jag does that to get sued. I believe she wants that attention from those bigger celebrities because she's a nobody. So she's on here saying a lot of that to get Beyonce, Jay-Z, and these bigger names to sue her so she can come back and say, look, they're trying to get me. You know what I'm saying? All of that is a game.
Oh, I didn't think about it that way. That's a good point. That could be, yeah. And then you raise your popularity, in
Exactly.
an elevator, and it says, see, this justifies what I've been saying. So, well, let's move a little bit to the since you brought up the thing about people attacking family. Due to the attacks that your family has sustained and people getting close to you for content purposes to try to quote unquote come back and destroy you, how has your virtual life affected your physical life, like on the street, like how you interact with people? Do you feel like you're less trusting? Do you feel like maybe you're more suspicious? Do you feel like you look at people, because people always say, oh, this isn't real, this is Facebook or this is YouTube, but no, these are real people. And so, um, has that impacted how you deal with people in everyday life?
I would say no, and I also think too with that there's an L to hold, right? Because it was never like that. Like the stuff I see online, I never had to deal with that in person. I gave credence to a lot of that because of y'all, because of the internet people. Like I ain't never had no issues with nobody being out. Like you know what I'm saying. So the issues I see are issues that anybody would see typically, but then you get to the internet and people make it seem like it's worse than what it is. I don't have um, any of the issues I've discussed though on the internet over the years. For example, issues with my wife, issues with a white person inside of a store, any of that. I walk in the store and we laugh and we having fun. It's a wonderful festive event every day I'm outside. Okay. So I get on here and I have to deal with the realities of other people's negatives, right? The fact that you had a bad day or the fact that, you might have issues with white America and whatnot. And lending your ear to that at times might be a detriment. Because, like I said, I ain't had them issues. I can go anywhere, have any fun with anybody, male, female, black, white, Asian, whoever. I've never had these issues in life, whether it be on the internet or before the internet. Just never been my problem. I'm a very likable person in person. You get on here, though, I think you change a lot of that because people want to sell themselves. They want to be seen. It's much harder to be authentic on here because people are going to read into what they want to read into. So when you meet me in person, you meet my authentic, wonderful, great, amazing smile. On here, you know what I'm saying? If we talking about what's going on in the community or something that's happening,
Yeah.
yeah, fam, you're going to get the worst of me. And so I think that makes a difference. Out in public, we're not talking about the ills of the world. We're not talking about how
Yeah, that's
horrible it
true.
is or femicide or any of that when we on the streets. And so with that, it's all love. It's great. And no, this has never affected me on the outside. Never.
So do you think that's because you don't have those type of that level of conversation with people, that is more in passing, so you don't get to see underneath, you don't get to see the dark side of people, that underbelly that gets exposed? Because I will say, I felt like when I was still in law enforcement, of course, you're always looking for that element. So I saw that element, but even in passing, I feel like you felt when I was doing blue collar work, it was more just happy go, just hey, how you doing? Quick conversations. And now that I've transitioned to what is considered white collar work, office politics is, I would say, it's similar to what we saw in the States. And I'm just baffled by it. I'm amazed by it because these people are educated with degrees and they're supposed to be more educated. And like, I just think your behavior is supposed to be better. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of weird. But I feel like the
Nah,
experience should prepare me for it.
um, the only time I was in corporate America for 4 years, I really feel like it was kind of like this. It was kind of like preparation for it because the backbiting from people who you look up to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just be real with you. I look up to people with degrees. I give you a higher level of respect that you did that. You should be more intelligent. And,
Yeah.
I had to come to grips with the fact that that's just not true. They're just as messy. They're just as silly. You know what I'm saying? Don't none of that
Yeah,
matter.
like the worst behavior, and I'll be like, I saw it at you, like when I see these professionals, and I'm like, oh my god, I
Yeah,
expected that
you might
from
as well be
you.
hanging out on the corner somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Around some people that don't have a degree because that's what it seemed like at times.
It does, it really does. So moving forward, I just think, do you, as far as content goes, do you think you're going to be primarily on YouTube, or are you still going to do Rumble?
I still do Rumble too because to be honest, a lot of the topics that I really want to do, like I said, the turn of the year, I want to get back into my JFK project, but that's just not something I can do on YouTube because you know what I'm saying they really don't play about that type of stuff. You know, just to make it simple, they don't want that on here. So because I'm well studied on it, and it's something that I really like. That's content I'll always do on Rumble. So I'll always be on that side too, but of course, this is where most of the people view videos at on YouTube. So I'll be on both.
So, because I noticed like people like the Dark Horse podcast and Joe Rogan has more content over there, and I noticed that you can build because I see people getting pretty good numbers over there. That so I was going to ask you what is the difference between here and Rumble? Does Rumble not censor as much, or what is it about Rumble that allows someone like Dark Horse podcast feel that they can go over there and express their views about like when COVID happened, they were getting their videos taken down and shut down because these are scientists and they were just basically in the opposite side of what the CDC was saying. And it turned out they were actually right about a lot of what they were saying, but they couldn't do it on YouTube. So is it that there's why the need to not just totally abandon and go over to Rumble if Rumble is better?
Well, the only part of it that I would say is better is the free speech. And you know what I'm saying, maybe the ability to get your video up and not have to worry about it coming down. But as far as getting it viewed, you can get views over there, you can make money over there, but to send a message out to the world, you're not doing that on Rumble. It's just a smaller platform and you know it and you can see it. And so if you're just trying to make money and get your message out to who will hear it, sure. But if you want to talk to everybody, you kind of know you got to go to the bigger platform, which would be YouTube.
Is Rumble growing?
I would say it's growing though. I would say it's growing. It's still not YouTube though. I think YouTube has got a head start and
It
so
does.
many people know to come here. And I think too, if you think about how the mainstream has invaded YouTube in the past 5 years, there's been like a mainstream invasion, and so I think that drove a lot of the users here, as opposed to a place like Rumble. So it is a benefit. I think it's harder to get started because there's less people.
So many celebrities are on YouTube now. I think so they don't care about getting rid of the smaller content creators. When I see everybody from Tamron Hall to Oprah, who
Right.
doesn't Tia Mowry or Maury, however you say her last name. I mean, almost all these celebrities have YouTube. Look at Nick Cannon has a podcast now. Cam Newton. I'm just looking at all these celebrities with podcasts, and I'm wondering where does that leave the regular average Joe like us in terms of content?
It leaves us out. I mean, I wanted to do a sports show this year. Actually, is I had planned on doing a sports show, and I looked up, and it's all of the former athletes have a podcast now.
They
So
do.
if I do a sports show, I'll be competing with former NFL players, former NBA players, and it's like, okay, unless you get some type of gimmick to go with that, it's a pointless uphill climb. You're not gonna do better commentary than Shannon Sharp and Chad Ochocinco. People would rather hear them. And so, like I say, with that, they've effectively moved a lot of us out of conversations.
I don't
The
know if
rappers
I
coming
agree with
on.
that because I see so many. Even I saw two women doing a boxing channel, and while no, you're not probably not going to get as big as them as the sports people who actually, Cam Newton or whatever, but you might because you are a regular person and you may be able to get them to come visit you and get popular enough because I think you have an interesting enough perspective and you're entertaining enough where I think you could do a good sports show. And I think people will watch it because I'm watching these two women do this boxing show, and these boxing shows are taking off, and like people are
But see,
really
that's a
going boxing.
gimmick. But see, that's a gimmick
Yeah,
though. You know what I'm saying? If you
but so
got
is sports
women doing
period.
boxing, that's a
No, but
gimmick. 'Cause I'm
there
not.
are two dudes that do it too. There are two brothers that my husband likes to watch, and they have a boxing podcast. Actually, he watches a couple of them, and they are just funny. Like this one guy, he's always making these. He has these sounds, and he just gives his perspective on boxing in an entertaining way. So I would say for you, if you are interested in doing sports, and I kind of see you as a Renaissance man, you're a jack of all trades, you know a little bit about everything. I think you'd have a really interesting podcast, and you should give it a whirl. And oh man, the hip hop shows. Everybody giving their opinion on hip hop too. It's just so much. And I think like a hip hop, like your hip hop sports show you were talking about doing, dude, do it. I'm telling you, do it.
I might come back and do it someday. I kind of, like I said, I backed out of it because a lot of that it just didn't seem to be like it seemed more of an uphill climb, and that's not what I prefer. Like I said, my preference is the news. My
Okay.
preference is kind of the history and whatnot, as opposed to sports. I like to watch and engage, indulge in sports, but I would prefer to talk about, the other things.
Okay, because I see so many hip hop shows, and I think a hip hop boxing show, I mean, hip hop sports show would really be interesting. So, but on that vein, since people like Black Thought and Most Def and all these people are doing, Chappelle and them, they're doing their podcasts and stuff now. I know it's always hard, but go ahead and give me your top five before we get out of here.
Top five, what
Rappers,
of all time or right now? What we talking about?
whatever you want to give. Actually, let's
Man.
do right now. Who's hot right now?
So I would top five right now, man. You know what's crazy? I think some of them women are in that conversation. Like and keep I don't even listen to any of this stuff, but just from the outside looking in and seeing what people like. Because I don't listen to a lot of the new artists. I'm kind of, just old head that stick with the old stuff. But I'm seeing people like Glorilla blow up that,
Okay.
I would have never thought that she would get as big as she is. Um, Dirk, and it's messed up, Dirk got himself in that jam that he's in, but he grew from a drill artist to winning Grammys. You know what I'm saying? A little Chicago dude shooting up people and whatnot to now, he's winning Grammys and whatnot. So of course you got the Kendrick and Drake. That I think the only reason their little beat went viral was because they're the top two. You know what I'm saying? They
Okay.
kind of the top two in the game. And then J. Cole, you know what I'm saying? J. Cole is he's definitely still up there. I think some of the older ones like the Jay-Z's and some of them cats, their time just came and went. They're still legends, you know what I'm saying? They'll still get their place in the game, but I don't think people are checking for Jay-Z like the way they would check for, let's say, a Lil Baby or a Drake or a Kendrick. Is they checking for these younger, newer
Right.
artists now. Like I say, even the women are in the mix now. So it's looking
So
good out here
okay.
as far as that.
Now, what about you for all time? Like your all time?
All time would be Tupac, Ice Cube, Scarface. Um, Let me see who else I want to put in there because I don't want to. I don't want to say nobody that don't belong here. So we got Pac, Cube, Face. I would throw a group in there just to be fair. Outcast. I don't want to because if we're not gonna do groups, I want to make sure they shine. And who would round out my top five? Because I was more about the messaging, right? So
Mhm.
Pop, Cube, and Scarface was always easy go-tos because they were more about the message. But when we get outside of that, I would probably say somebody like 50. And 50 because it was more of a representation of what I was going through and living with myself in the early 2000s. I became a fan of his and whatnot. So it would probably be those five for my favorites, top five. And it's not even based on skill set or any of that. It's more so what I could always relate to. Because I think that was
Okay.
attracted me to music initially is what I can relate to.
Okay, cool. Well, Tess, thank you for sitting and doing this interview with me. It was great. I enjoyed it, and we'll hopefully have you come back and we can talk about another topic some other time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Always. Anytime. No doubt.
Shalom, everybody. Hold on.
I took my channel away. I just went to Rumble, right?
We'll give them a minute to come back here. Tess, there you go.
Hold on, Ren. Let me see. Hold on, hold on. Okay, am I back? All right, I got a
Yep,
phone
you're
call.
back.
I got a
Okay.
phone call. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay.